Hello and welcome to the show. We start today with an Audi TT RS, but this is not the standard Audi TT. This is a special edition version of the car. I believe it is from the day one edition of Forza 5. There's various different special cars from various versions of the game. I think this is from the day one edition. It's basically a pre-tuned, sort of pre-built racing vehicle. I can't quite figure out all of the parts used on it. The power and torque are exactly the same. I think it's a little bit lighter. I believe it's got sport tyres. It's not got race tyres. I think it's got sport tyres and sort of suspension, brake parts, etc. It's basically a ready-to-run racing vehicle that you can buy from the game for a mere 52,000 credits, which isn't very much. In fact, it is exactly the same price as the standard Audi TT. So you can get this maxed out racing vehicle, top of B class, plonk it on a track. It's a pretty damn nice car to drive as well. I may have gone a tiny bit wide. I was exploring, okay? It's four-wheel drive, it has understeer, etc. So yeah, you can get this pre-built, ready-to-go racing car for not very much money at all, which naturally got me thinking, could me and Daniel build racing cars for less money, and would they go quicker than the Audi? As I said, this is not a bad car, so trying to build a B-class car and go quicker than this for 52,000 credits was quite a tall order. Unfortunately, Daniel cannot be here for the recording of the audio. However, this is the vehicle that he chose to use. Yes, it's a Lotus Elise. Normally we have a rule where I don't allow Daniel to use a Lotus, otherwise that is all he would use for budget car builds. This time I completely forgot about it, so we have a Lotus here. Yeah, the Elise in question costs, I think it's 36 or 37,000 credits, which doesn't leave you an awful lot of room for upgrades. There's not a huge amount of money left for the upgrading, and because of that reason Daniel opted to not use race tyres. Race tyres cost 10,000 credits, so if you'd stuck that on the Elise you would have used pretty much all of your budget. Instead, he is running on sport tyres. I believe they are 5,000 credits. His kind of answer was that, well, you know, it's going to be a good enough handling car as it is, you know, it's an Elise, you know, it's going to be a pretty good handling vehicle. There was a combination of power and handling parts to make up the rest of the money. I believe this was putting out just under 300 horsepower, and when you consider this car weighs about 1,500 pounds, that's a pretty damn good power to weight ratio in the little Lotus. There are some downsides though to the Elise, as we can see around the second to last corner. These are not the easiest cars in the world to drive. If I'm honest, they can be quite twitchy. Because of their tiny wheelbase, they're very, very lightweight. If you aren't careful, these can be very, very twitchy cars. They can have quite a lot of oversteer, as this one here, as you can see, it doesn't have a wing. I don't think it has any upgraded tyre widths, and it's only on sport tyres. They can sometimes be a little bit of a pain to get around the track. As for me, well, I'd gone down a completely different route. I'd gone for a Ford Mustang. This particular one is the SVT Cobra. I was very, very tempted to use a Shelby GT500. I really wanted to use it. The problem was it started off at the, I think it was 36, 37,000 credit mark again, and I really wanted race tyres on that thing, and it's too much money. You just wouldn't have had enough money for all of the upgrades. So instead, I opted for this one. The car itself, 29,000 credits, which means I could afford the race tyres fairly sensibly and some other upgrades to go with it. Brake, suspension, weight reduction. This is also a twin-turboed version of the car, bumping the power up to 401 horsepower. More than the Elise, but considering this car weighs 2,700 pounds, that's like 1,000, well, over 1,000 more than the Elise. Power to weight ratio is still better in the Lotus by quite a way, if I'm honest. There is quite a lot of torque from this car, 454. That's not too bad, I have to say. As far as the driving characteristics go of this vehicle, it wasn't too bad. It was oversteery, despite my efforts with the race tyres. It was still quite an oversteery car. I would have liked to have had aero bits on. I ran out of money because I would have liked to try and keep it on the road a little bit better. However, unlike the Lotus, that if you get it sliding, it gets unhappy, it gets twitchy, and it tries to throw you at a piece of scenery, this is a very controllable car. If you got it sideways, which I did quite a few times on these early laps, it was very easy to bring it back into line. I was never afraid that this car was going to suddenly fling me at the scenery. I could always manage to catch it and keep it relatively well under control. In some respects, this was a little bit easier to drive than perhaps I had expected. So we lined up to have a race. Off the line, well, the Lotus vanishes. It just shoots off the line. It has much better power to weight ratio. The Mustang sits and spins its wheels, and by the first corner, the Lotus is quite a long way in front. I didn't quite expect as larger a margin as we had. Off the start line, the Lotus really shot off into the distance. However, the Mustang isn't really going away through these first corners. I had feared that when I saw what Daniel had brought, that I would be absolutely stuffed and that I wouldn't stand a chance at all. However, I was wrong. You see, under braking, the Mustang was very good. I'm not sure quite what it is. I guess the race, well, I assume the race tyres certainly helped quite a lot. But under braking, the Mustang was very, very good. And the Elise, well, that could get a little bit twitchy on these opening laps, especially with the cold tyres. It certainly doesn't help. And as we come through the follow-through, Daniel gets in out a little bit wide, puts a wheel on the dirt, whereas things are nice and relatively clean. I'm pretty sure I was sideways at some point through that corner, and the Mustang gets to the inside of the second to last corner. Daniel ends up running a little bit wide and dips another wheel on the grass. That second to last corner is a real pain for actual proper racing. The track is actually too wide, which is a straight. Normally the track is too narrow. In that case, it's so wide that there can be so many different lines that people take through there. It becomes a little bit awkward trying to do overtakes and trying to defend at that corner. It's a strange one for sort of normal racing. Anyway, things were, as you could see, pretty damn close between these two cars. I was amazed to have had the lead or to have got the lead within the first lap. I didn't quite expect that with the Mustang. However, the Lotus has excellent drive out of every single corner around this track. Daniel can just pull a few feet on me out of every single corner. We tried to fit cars too wide through the hammerhead. It doesn't work. You can't really fit two cars, especially two cars that we've only driven 2 laps of, or 3 laps with, sorry, and they're quite oversteery. They don't fit through the hammerhead. Daniel tried to go around the outside. He took out a few cones, just ran out of road, and I could manage to keep the position. But you can see the problem both of us were having with our cars. There was just a lack of rear end grip. They were sliding around everywhere. Amazingly, I held on to the lead for about 4 laps. Daniel had started to get the hang of his Lotus and was now pestering the back of the Mustang as I get more sideways through the follow-through and past the tyre walls. I'm still struggling with that bit of oversteer, and eventually Daniel has a big dive into the second to last corner and I just can't do anything about it. Yeah, it's a strange corner. It's also very hard to see. That was another thing I forgot to say. It's a very hard corner because we both drive in cockpit view. Incredibly easy to lose sight of the car that you're racing with when it dives up the inside there. So we both gave each other plenty of space, and that's why you see us running out quite wide when someone was going past. But again, the Elise can't vanish off up the road. The Mustang does have a better top speed. I will be honest, it will get to a faster top speed. However, out of all of these corners, as you're about to witness again, the Elise has much better acceleration, has much better drive out of the corners. Provided it's not going sideways and being twitchy, it has much better drive. So around this particular track, the Mustang really didn't overpower the Elise in a straight line. It never kind of overpowered it down any of these straights. As we come out side by side from the exit of the hammerhead, the Elise is gone again. I'm very glad he had good acceleration. I didn't want to go too wide, particularly through here. It's in these sort of cars, it wouldn't have been a huge amount of fun. They just do not quite have the grip that I would ideally like. As I've been saying regularly, the Lotus is quite scary, or it can be quite scary. So things go a little bit wrong in the second to last corner. There is a tiny tap between our two cars. Now, you can't really see it very well on the replay. It was the smallest of brushes, and that's all it takes. That's all it takes to make the Elise unhappy. If Daniel had done that to my Mustang, the Ford would be fine. I mean, it may have got a little bit out of shape, a little bit sideways. Certainly wouldn't have spun around in a big circle. I have a dive up the inside of turn 1, and Daniel just simply didn't expect the Mustang to be able to get stopped. It's very rare that you can say a Ford Mustang has outbraked a Lotus Elise. It's not a normal saying. It's very rare that you say a Ford Mustang is easier to drive than a Lotus Elise as well. That's some more unusual sentences. And after the 6-lap race, the Mustang would take the victory. Yeah, not the outcome I expected. In all honesty, the Elise was a little bit faster. I think over the course of the lap, Daniel would sort of catch up. Whenever I got in front, Daniel would catch up. He would hound the back of the Mustang. But I would win the race because the Elise was harder to drive. The Mustang was a better car through the corners. That's certainly not the outcome that I expected. However, this challenge was not to see which car out of our two were faster. It was to see if we could go faster than the pre-built Audi TT. So we went to the Nürburgring GP track, a place that me and Daniel have barely driven on Forza 5. We know the track fairly well from Forza 4 and other racing games, but neither of us have very much experience on this track, so it's a completely fair, or as fair a testing ground as you can get. We are both very similarly skilled drivers, if you like. So we're going to do 4 laps around here to see what lap times these cars could do, and then I'd drive the Audi and see what lap times that could do. Now for this, none of these cars have been tuned. The Lotus, the Mustang, none of them have been tuned, simply because the Audi is pre-built. You don't have to do any work to the Audi, so again, to keep things as fair as possible, everything remains the same. And around Nürburgring, it was a similar story with the Elise. Yes, it was a very quick car, and it is very fast accelerating out of all of the corners around here. However, it's not the easiest car in the world to drive. It is twitchy, it is oversteering. You have to occasionally be a little bit careful of the curbs. I saw on a few occasions Daniel's Lotus go for an exploration across bits of grass, because you hit a curb a little bit too much, it'll stick the back end out, and with such a tiny wheelbase it can actually be quite a pain to catch the car. My Mustang, well, I think this track suited perhaps the Mustang a little bit more. There are some longer straights here. However, remember, as I said, or as you saw in fact, the Elise gets much better drive, much better acceleration out of the corners than the Mustang. So that overall top speed advantage of the Ford is not huge. Also, the Mustang has a terrible, terrible gearbox. I didn't upgrade the gearbox, I ran out of money, so I couldn't upgrade the gearbox to a racing one, which means the ratios were no good, really, for what we were doing. In the entirety of this lap, I don't think I ever got higher than 4th gear, and it's just too long. The gear ratios in this were just too long. That probably doesn't help it with that punch out of the corners. That may be one of the reasons, along with the weight, that it loses out to the Elise. Yeah, the gear ratios are less than ideal in the Mustang. But it's still not, it's not a hard car to drive, this one. On the most part, I say on the most part, I did at one point spin the car, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad to drive. Really surprised me how well it got stopped. The brakes were really good on this car. And if you're careful, if you're a little bit careful, a little bit sensible on the throttle, and things are okay. You don't have too many wheel spin problems. You know, it is easy to slide if you want it to, but it's perfectly controllable if you're feeling in a sensible mood. Then it was time to take the Audi again. 4 laps with me driving the car again to keep things as fair as possible. No point giving it to our driver, who would go quicker than us. So yeah, I was told to drive the Audi because Daniel doesn't have these cars. It turns out this is a good car to drive. Actually, it surprised me. This thing, it was very, very easy. As I said at the start, you could literally pick this car up and go racing in B class. It is such a nice and easy car to drive. It really is. It has understeer. You will notice a couple of the high speed corners here. In fact, it says day 1 on the roof, so I presume it is a day 1 edition car. Yeah, through the high speed corners you will notice the understeer. You will notice that it's very much 4-wheel drive. That is the downside. Well, to me personally, it's not a particular downside. That's how I like my cars to drive. The big upside to this car is you turn out of a corner and boot it. 4-wheel drive will sort it out. You just have no problems. There is no twitchiness in this car. It's round a corner, floor it, and everything's good, provided you haven't understeered too much. It is a bit of a heavier car, £3,000, so twice the weight of the Elise, this thing, and with only sort of 330 horsepower. Power to weight ratio is not particularly good in this car. It's not as fast as either the Lotus or the Ford when it comes to the straight bits, but what you lack in the straight line speed and the acceleration, you make up for with consistency, with reliability when it comes to the corners. You know exactly what this car is going to do the entire way around a lap, and it doesn't surprise you when it gets to a corner. To kind of reinforce that point, as I said, we did 4 laps with each of the cars. The 3 flying laps I did with the Audi, there was 0.3 of a second between all of them. That is just the consistency. I'd never driven this car before and don't know this track massively well, or I haven't driven this track that much on Forza 5. That's the level of consistency you get from this car straight off. That's just how easy this vehicle is to drive. Whereas with the Mustang, I spun it once, and Daniel put the Elise on the grass 2 times. So, yeah, the Audi TT is a very, very easy car to drive. I enjoy driving it. Yes, it has understeer, but it is certainly perfectly manageable. However, on to the times that matter, the lap times for the Nürburgring. The Audi TT set a 2-minute 18.7. I don't know if that's good or not. That was the lap time that it set. The Lotus did a 2-minute 18.5. Daniel got 0.2 of a second quicker than the Audi, and my Mustang a 2:17.5, a second faster than the Elise. That's not the results that I expected. I didn't think the Mustang would go quicker, and honestly I thought the Audi would go quicker than the pair of them. It's so much easier to drive. Over the course of the 4 laps, I suspect the Audi was probably quicker because it was so consistent. But over the course of a single flying lap, both the 2 cars were faster, and the Mustang was the quickest of the 3. There we go. Not every day we have a Mustang beating an Elise. Well, there we go. That is it for this video, guys. You can build a car for 52,000 credits and go quicker than the pre-built racing Audi TT, but it's probably not going to be as nice to drive. Anyway, that is it for today, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, a goodbye.